Shalom. I am Rabbi Nathan Davidovich, speaking to you on behalf of the webyeshiva.org, speaking to you from Efrat, Israel. I'm going to discuss this week's Parsha, at least part of it, Parsha's Ekev. And what I'm going to discuss is the importance of us recognizing that all that we have, all that we've achieved, is not due to our own great abilities or great wisdom. And we're going to talk about several sentences in this Parsha that teach us the importance of recognizing where all the good that surrounds us comes from. And I guess before we could even think about the good that surrounds us, we have to, in fact, recognize that despite whatever is happening in our lives, there is good constantly that is surrounding us. I remember once, many, many years ago, when I was taking my car in for service, and I had a driver from the company that was taking me back to pick up my car. And he said, "You know, you're always smiling. Why do you smile so much?" I said, "Well, it's a great day. I had a great thing happen to me this morning." "Well, what is that?" he said. "I woke up." How many of us think that we wake up in the morning? That's fantastic. So let's talk about what this Parsha says. In the early part of the Parsha, there are three different sentences that I want to focus on. The first is, it says, "Ki lo al halechem levado yichye ha'adam," and it is not by bread alone that man lives. "Ki al kol motzei pi Hashem yichye ha'adam," but only by everything that comes out of the mouth of Hashem. There's everything that Hashem does. That's what gives us life. Another pasuk says, "V'yochalta v'shavata v'rachta Hashem lokecha al horetz hatova asher nasan loch." You shall eat, and you shall be satiated, and then you shall bless the Lord your God for all of the good that Hashem has given to you in your land. And this, of course, is the positive commandment of Birchat HaMazon. After we eat bread, after we eat a meal, we have to thank Hashem for it. But the wording in Birchat HaMazon is interesting, because in the first two paragraphs of Birchat HaMazon, it's not only talking about thanking Hashem for the food. That's the first part. It says thanks for the food. But then it goes on to in the next paragraph, thanking us for all of the kindness Hashem does for us, taking us out of Egypt, giving us life, all of these things. And it's an interesting question. We're supposed to be thanking God for the food, Birchat HaMazon. So there's an interesting comment that Rabbi Shia Twersky said. He talks about when you have a guest in your home. Let's say you invite somebody for a meal for Shabbat. When the meal's over, the guest is ready to leave. The guest is not going to say, "Thank you for letting me into your house. Thank you for letting me sit at your table. Thank you for the food." He'll give a general thank you. "Thank you for inviting me." And he gives an example. He says, if somebody's in an arid desert, stranded, and he's just stuck in a desert, and all of a sudden a truck driver comes along and not only picks him up, but gives him water to drink and food to eat, what's he going to thank that truck driver for? He's going to thank the truck driver not only for picking him up, but for picking him up, giving him to drink, giving him food, every aspect of the way. And that's what we are taught with Birchat HaMazon, that what we should do is thank Hashem for everything. Now, the Rabbi Bachai, on this very sentences, says something very interesting. He says, everybody who thanks God for every enjoyment that they've had in life, who made al hashgacha, he is a witness to the constant providence that Hashem gives to us. And he says, if somebody has if he has benefit from this world and he doesn't thank God for it, goes el meimenu. He's a thief. He's stealing because Malaharetz Chazdo, God's honor fills the whole world. God has given us this world and he's given us permission to use it if we but ask him. And the way we ask him is with a blessing. The next sentence I want to talk about is, it says a few sentences later, these are all connected. V'yamarta bilvavecha, I'm sorry, kochi v'osem yadi asali et hachayil hazeh. You will say in your heart that everything that happens to me is my doing, comes from my strength and my abilities. Rabbi Shiatwersky gives an interesting story to illustrate how wrong this is, how wrong it is to look at a temporal success, look at the physical things that are going on with us and think that we did it. And he tells a story about Yellowstone National Park. There's an old geyser that is called Old Faithful. And Old Faithful squirts up from the ground at relative times. You can know in advance when it's coming up. There are a couple of pranksters who decide they're going to fool people. So they found in a junkyard a steering wheel and a shaft, and they got to a little hill overlooking Old Faithful. And when nobody was watching, they put the shaft in the ground and the steering wheel there, and they sat and waited. And very shortly thereafter, a tour group came along. And the tour guide is explaining that every so many minutes, the geyser erupts, and you can see it erupt. It'll erupt now in exactly 3 minutes. So with about 4 seconds to go, one of the pranksters yells to the other one, "Okay, Frank, let her go." And the other one turns the steering wheel, and the people look at it, and all of a sudden he's turning the steering wheel, and the geyser's going. So you can look at that and think, wow, they really started it. It's a valve that turns on and off. Not at all the case. The valve that turns on and off our parnasa, the benefits that we have in life, the joy that we have in life, is not a valve that we're turning. It's a valve that Hashem is turning and giving to us. And that's the key. The key from this Parsha, from these sentences, is to recognize that we're not living just on the material things that God gives us. We're living on the spirituality that God gives to us. We're living on the recognition that we have to be thankful for every single thing that happens. A flower doesn't grow unless Hashem wants it to. My father of blessed memory used to say that you can't move the finger of your hand unless Hashem wants it to happen. And we see Nebuch, unfortunately, people who are suffering, who suffer various illnesses that prevent them from moving a finger or other things. We have to be thankful for every single part of our life. That's the message. That's the message of this Parsha. That's the message that speaks to us today, because unless we can see the gratitude that we are getting, unless we have the gratitude and can express it to Hashem, unless we can see the beauty around us, we're missing out on the most important part of life. I wish everybody a wonderful Shabbat. I would give everybody, including myself, the bracha that we shall always see the source of our blessing and thank God for it. And I thank you for listening on behalf of the webyeshiva.org. And God willing, we'll talk to you next week at the same time. Thank you. Shabbat Shalom.